Welcome to Virginia Humanities. Come on in.
Hi, everybody. I'm very happy to be with you. My name is Elizabeth Dowling Taylor. We're here at Virginia Humanities. I'm the author of the original Black Elite, Daniel Murray, and the Story of a Forgotten Era. My first book was A Slave in the White House, Paul Jennings and the Madisons. It tells the story of James Madison's enslaved manservant and his unique journey from slavery to freedom. What led me to Daniel Murray was my research with Paul Jennings. Daniel Murray was an assistant librarian of Congress at a time when such professional appointments for Black men were rare. And that provided for me some key details on Paul Jennings' life, but it was also the spark of my interest in Daniel Murray himself. My publicist with my first book threw out a wide net and scored me a spot on The Daily Show with Jon Stewart. And my book reached the New York Times bestseller list after that appearance. So all thanks to Jon Stewart for giving me my book the push that allowed my byline on my next book, the original Black Elite, to include the fact that I was a New York Times bestseller. That was very lucky and very, very exciting. I have had a long-standing interest in African American history because I have a long-standing interest from my childhood because of my mother's work as an activist in caring about America's troubled race relations. And African Americans are among those Americans with the deepest roots in this country. And when I realized about that glorious period of advancement following emancipation, following the passage of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments to the United States Constitution, granting all rights of citizenship, including the vote, to African Americans. I mean, racism never disappeared altogether, heaven knows, but it did seem like it was trending in that direction. Murray and those in his circle were highly educated, they were successful, they were genteel, they were financially well-to-do. They wanted to demonstrate, those in the Black elite, by their own lives, that they were in the forefront, but that all Blacks, given education, given opportunity, would be able to follow in their footsteps. So they felt like they were brokers of the race, that they could kind of stand as a bridge between white society and the majority of the Black population. I like to write history, but I write it in narrative form to make it a story. And I chose Daniel Murray and his family as my subject. I did that to personalize this important history. Daniel Murray's name may not have been well known, but he was a leading citizen in his day, and he was determined that if people could only be more aware of the achievements of not only African Americans, but as he would say, people of the colored race throughout the world, then they would appreciate how there was no intellectual basis to color discrimination. Daniel Murray's wife was also a race activist. Her focus was on early childhood intervention. But her idea was that if An African American child was not raised in a home such as that provided in her own family, then the next best thing would be to intervene at the earliest stage possible. Well, one thing I think that's interesting about me, as far as being an author, is that I was over 50 when my first book was published. Making a living, being a wife and mother, all of that took up a lot of my energy. After I had accomplished that, I wondered why anybody ever wrote a second book once they realized all the work that was involved. And so I surprised myself when I began the process all over again with the original Black Elite. Although it is true that almost all in the Black Elite were light-skinned, they were primed to be assimilated into society as Americans first and people of color second. That should not be misunderstood to think that they did not wholly identify with being African American. Many of them were light-skinned enough to be able to pass for white, but they were proud of their African American heritage. They wanted to be accepted as Americans with no apology for color. One of his Black Elite associates was very, very light-skinned, and he said, "My problem is I've been trying to pass for colored my whole life." I did not want my photograph on the jacket flap, and in both cases, the editor responded, "Okay, but why?" And my answer was that, like everybody else, I did not want to be prejudged by the color of my skin. When I found out that my book was the T's April selection, I was thrilled and looked forward to seeing in what ways it would be discussed and how I might contribute to the discussion. The topic for the month was money, so it was interesting the ways in which their talk revolved around that subject. You know, being part of the Black Elite was tricky. Did you have the means to be part of this lifestyle? Did you have an opulent home where you could entertain? Did you have the right clothes for going out to concerts and so on? So having money was just part of it. They were selective. They entertained with one another. So they were not an easy group to break into. You know, people talk about the exceptionalism of America. The only way in which we could accurately be described as exceptional is if in the present and in the future we honor, as we have not always done in the past, our founding ideals. And I believe that the only way that we can redeem ourselves as a nation is to stand by those ideals without exception in the future. Thank you all at the T for visiting me at Virginia Humanities.